Hey everybody, video here for you today. Little ancient America. I've been doing some reading. We're going to go down to Lake Minnetonka here, in my home state of Minnesota. Right down here is Lake Minnetonka, just west of Minneapolis, St. Paul. It's a very big lake. It stretches about 10 miles from southwest to northeast here. Probably most famous from the Prince movie, Purple Rain. There's a deep history here. Let's just talk about it. You notice right down here, the western side of the lake, there is a city called Mound. Well, that is called Mound for a reason. One of my good friends used to live right down here. My brother used to live right over here back a long time ago in a different lifetime, but I've had tremendous fun on Lake Minnetonka. Let's talk about something right down here. Just southwest of Mound is Halsted's Bay down here, the very western end of the lake. Down here, ancient burial mounds dominated the shore. Here in this diagram, I have the shore perfectly lined up. This is where all these different shaped burial mounds once existed. This is what it looks like today. Right down here, these people live over sacred burial mounds. Decades ago, these mounds were just leveled, and then the homes were built here. These mounds had different shapes, round ones, oval ones, elongated ones. But the true history here, it really wasn't made that publicly available, and few people know about it. Here's a topographical map of the shore in Halsted Bay with the burial mounds superimposed in here. They were numerous, covered the whole shoreline in here. Here are all the numerous burial mounds superimposed over the neighborhood here. Right down here, there was probably a 1,000 to 2,000-year-old sacred site here. Ancient mounds, right? On Halsted Bay here, the very western part of Lake Minnetonka. That's probably not a coincidence. As the sun sets in the west, and just like in Egypt, these people associated a lot of their stories with the movement of the sun here. But here's Halsted's Bay, West End, Lake Minnetonka. Here's a report from the Minnesota Historical Society on the Malmsten Mound Group, and that is named after a Miss Ada Malmsten, who lived on the property in 1947. This PDF is very detailed. I got a lot of information for my video here. Here are some artifacts found at the mound site here. Here is a diagram of where stuff was excavated from. These reports and diagrams done by a Mr. Lewis 130, 140 years ago is the only history of this place we have left. But here, very western end of the mound group, this is the mound that these artifacts were excavated from. Here is a map done in 1883 by Theodore Lewis of the Lake Minnetonka area and all the mounds around it. The Halsted Bay area was just one of the sites around Lake Minnetonka, and there were hundreds of them, totally wiped out by history. This was done in 1883 by Theodore Lewis, and I believe he was a researcher whose work I used in my Mounds Park video coming from St. Paul, Minnesota, done about a year and a half ago. Here is an article I found from 2014. New test confirmed Lake Minnetonka canoe is 1,000 years old. Here is a look. They found this in 1934. They thought it was maybe 100 or 200 years old, but tests came back, and it was over 1,000 years old, so that really surprised them. But there you go. Found at the bottom of Lake Minnetonka, a canoe coming from this culture who built the mounds here. Here is a pic from 1934 when they discovered this canoe, and it was discovered because there was a drought going on here. Obviously, dry land below the docks here. Boats way out here. And a pic from 1934 there. But when this was dated a few years ago, it was determined to be the oldest canoe ever found in Minnesota. And it was found near Orono. And I think that black and white pic comes from right down in this area, right down here. Here is a map of Minnesota, the mound sites, and they say there might be 12,000 of them in Minnesota, but that's just a guesstimate. I mean, some of them are gone and some of them were removed before counts were done, but here's a map of the mound sites coming from Minnesota. Here's that map again, a Halsted Bay, and they've done quite a bit of LIDAR in Minnesota, and they said the stuff that was mapped in the late 1800s, only 5% of those mounds are detectable today. I found this article from the 1901 St. Paul Pioneer Press, 10 skeletons unearthed in Lake Minnetonka Mound. It says the crew engaged in building a new road a mile or more west of Mound City near Lake Minnetonka, and that was the old name of Mound, Minnesota, Mound City. but they made an interesting discovery the other day when 10 human skeletons were unearthed. It says, after the first skeleton was discovered, the workmen proceeded with great care. The 10 skeletons were discovered within a radius of 20 yards. They were found with a curious old pipe, a number of shells, which had been used for drinking purposes by the mound builders. I think those shells came from way, way far away, way down the Mississippi River. It says in 1885, several skeletons were discovered in a mound about 500 feet from the one where 10 skeletons were found the other day. The latest find will be carefully handled and given over to the keeping of some scientific society, dated May 22, 1901, Pioneer Press. Just south of Mound lies Eagle Island, and it's right down here. Is it called Eagle Island because of its shape? I wonder. Here is an old pic from Eagle Island. I guess there is an old mound on this island here. Here's one of many stories I found researching this. Road project on the edge of Lake Minnetonka disturbs ancient graves. And a lot of these places have been researched, but there was many of them found. The ones that were found a while ago were kind of hushed up and never told to the people who moved into these neighborhoods around Lake Minnetonka. Here is a plaque from the lake. It says, in May 1822, a Fort Snelling drummer boy named Joseph R. Brown and his friend William Snelling, son of the fort's commander, canoed up what is now called Minnehaha Creek to discover a lake long held sacred to the Indian people who built burial mounds along its shores. And that is the real only history of the mounds given on the plaque here. But that is quite a canoe trip up from Fort Snelling, and Fort Snelling is right along where the Minnesota River connects to the Mississippi River near the airport area and Bloomington, where I grew up. But it says here about the mounds, it says copper from the Great Lakes, obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, shark teeth from Chesapeake Bay, pearls from the Gulf of Mexico, and mica from the Appalachian Mountains have been found in the mounds as evidence of an extensive trade network. So this appears like a lot of other mound sites. Extensive trade networks went on, and it connected here to Lake Minnetonka. There's a fascinating history to Lake Minnetonka. The Rolling Stones played at Excelsior Amusement Park here in 1964, and there is a local myth about Mr. Jimmy and Excelsior and where that song lyric comes from. Just a fascinating history here, but none of it really includes the mounds that were around the lake, just a few old drawings. No pics of the mounds, no pics really of the artifacts. The Smithsonian was here, but a history that goes back here a long, long time. Obviously, a culture was here about 1,000 years ago, but they say the history of these people and the mounds goes back at least 6,000 years. And the earliest human habitation around the lakes dates back to around 11,000, 12,000 years ago. There were once a lot of sites in Minnesota along the rivers, like this one, Mounds Park in St. Paul, Minnesota, where there were many mounds, and it really was a feature of the landscape when you came up the river. Today, it's been pretty much lost to history, but a long, long time ago, this was the main feature when you approach St. Paul, Minnesota, along the Mississippi River here. And this went back 800, 1,000, 1,500 years, who knows? So that's an Ancient America video, Lake Minnetonka, Mound, called Mound for a reason, used to be called Mound City. There used to be Indian mounds, burial mounds all around this lake, place I used to hang out at. I'm sure the crappie fishing contest will be canceled. That usually comes up in April. That's unfortunate, but hope you thought that was interesting. And you all have a very safe day.